Don't forget to sub to my YouTube. We're at 9,500 subs on YouTube. Sub to my YouTube. Do it right now. I am a self-proclaimed excellent card player in whatever card game I choose to play. Digimon, I'll win tournaments. Yu-Gi-Oh, I'll top tournaments. Pokemon, I won a tournament once a long time ago. And whatever else. We're good at playing card games, right? We're good. We've entered into this era of Yu-Gi-Oh! I know a lot of people like to tend to complain about the format, how it's, it's kind of skill-less, it's kind of degenerate. Like, you're going and you're building a big combo deck and you're building a big board. Like, Drytrons make Herald of Ultimateness. Okay, well, how is that not degenerate? Or people are just doing all sorts of crazy shenanigans, like activating Tri-Brigade Revolt and all of that fun stuff on your opponent's turn. Like, that's not fun, right? Doesn't seem very interactive, doesn't seem very big brain 5000 IQ, right? Or you get people that just freaking summon Cyber Dragon Core and go off. Like who would do that? Who would do that? When it comes to card games and Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, there is skill, and it's all about you. I've been playing card games in a basement for about 10 years now. In the dark, dark basement, I have perfected my skills. I've perfected my shuffle. I've perfected my hand shuffle. I've perfected literally everything that you can possibly perfect when it comes to perfecting yourself for children's card games. It's truly like an art. And it's all about being a good pilot. How to be a good pilot. And before anyone asks, yes, I drew that. Yes, I have skills. Yes, I did it in Paint. If you guys want to pay me to commission you some paint work, let me know. So in the world, there are different kinds of pilots, right? You can go to school, post-secondary, you can become like an Air Force pilot, and you can potentially spend a lot of money doing that, and a lot of your life doing that. But then you come out of it with a good career, and you know how to fly your plane, right? You know how to fly your plane. It's not just Microsoft Flight Simulator, right? You actually leave with an actual degree that says, hey, I can actually fly this plane. I can actually fly this. Well, being a pilot in children's card games is actually very similar. To be a good pilot, you have to invest the same amount of time, if not more. You got to invest a lot of money, because through the years, you'll be spending a lot of money on cards. And it's a more active field. I feel like, there's a lot of card players in the world, a lot of potential pilots that you need to compete against for the top spot. If any, that doesn't really exist so much in like the airplane pilot world, right? You can just get a job and move on. And there's not many openings, but there's not many people with, the education for it either. So it's easy mode, right? Being a pilot at a card game, a good pilot, is arguably harder. Who would have ever thought that? Right, chat? Isn't that insane? Isn't that nuts? I just realized that the chats aren't even on. Hold on. There we go. Now everyone will be able to see everything. And I'm actually going to move the chats over here. And this is not an alternate art Draco sack. This is not anything else. This is art. When it comes to actually being good at card games, if you want to get regional invites, if you want to get regional tops, if you want to top a YCS, if you want to win a regionals, if you want to, any other card game equivalent, you want to do good. You want to do good at card games, right? So there are 3 steps you need to take in order to increase your piloting skills, because it's not the deck, the pilot. That being said, we're going to slide number 1. You have to get the cards. You actually need to get cards. Now imagine that you're a pilot and you want to fly your plane. What happens if you don't have a plane to fly? What happens if you don't have a plane to fly? Can anyone tell me what happens if you don't have a plane to fly? You're not flying anywhere, right? You're actually not even getting off the ground. You're stuck on the ground. You don't do anything. You don't do anything. You actually do nothing. You're just walking around like no other person, right? You're walking around. So what does a pilot have to do? A pilot has to actually have a plane to fly in so that they can fly. Woo! They can fly. And then they can actually do their job and do what they want to do, right? So, in the card game world, this is actually very similar. You need to get the cards. You have to get the cards. You know what? You have to get the cards. You have to get cards. I can't stress that enough. You cannot play a card game without the cards. You cannot play card games without cards. I know that's a weird thought. I know that's probably something you would have never guessed in a million years. And I can't blame you. Like, it's a hard thing to realize. That rationalization is super hard. Like planes. Planes, like, they can't just roll out the same parts for forever, right? Sometimes you'll have to swap in parts. You'll have to make repairs. You gotta refuel the plane, you know. Sometimes you gotta get a new plane altogether, or whatever, right? You actually need to be able to get those plane parts and get those new planes over and over and over and over and over again. Because if you try to fly the same plane for like 50 years, you might die because you might crash, right? Like legit. Card game world is very similar, right? We have cards. We have cards. We have cards. We have formats. We know that it's never just the same format, right? Sure, a deck might be relevant for a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. You know, whatever. But there will come a time where if you want to be successful, you will have to get new cards. Why? Because all the other pilots around you are getting new cards, right? And you don't want to be going to a 2021 tournament with your 2017 card pool, right? You're going to see a lightning storm, and you're going to throw up, and you're going to be depressed and sad. And then you're going to wish that you never went to that tournament, right? I mean, I think that makes sense. So you need to make sure that you get cards. Always make sure you have the deck. Because while it is not the deck that makes it, and it's you that makes it, if you don't have a deck in the first place, you ain't flying anywhere, right? I think that makes sense. Number 2, practice. You think pilots just get to be good pilots with no experience? They've probably spent hundreds of hours on Microsoft Flight Simulator before even going into a plane. And then they probably spent hundreds of hours just, figuring out how the plane works or whatever. And then you go to fly the plane, right? You get to fly the plane. And then you got to practice, and there's all these little contraptions and things and hydraulics and stuff. I know nothing about planes, clearly. Nothing. There's all these things you need to learn about your plane, your contraption, before you can go from point A to point B. That's just how it is. Card games, very similar, right? If you have to practice. You cannot just pick up a deck and know what you're doing. Even the best players need to practice. You think Pac would have won the YCS if we didn't practice? Probably not. You think other players would be as good as they are if they didn't practice? Probably not. Practice is key. You have to practice, you have to be good. And in order to get good, you need to practice. Practice, practice, practice. Playing as many games as possible, against as many different decks as possible, against as many different opponents as possible, format after format after format. That's how you gain experience, that's how you level up, and that's how you be the best you can be, the best pilot possible. Step number 3. This is the most important step. Yes, you can have the cards. Yes, you can practice. Absolutely. And you can get good. It's all the flow of nature, right? You need to have your stuff, you need to work on your stuff, you need to get good. Like any trade in the world, like any job, literally anything. You need to have everything in front of you. You need to play around with it. You need to rub it a little bit. You need to make it feel really good. You need to make yourself feel really good to the point that you're ecstatic. But there always comes a time where it's just not enough. And what do you need to do, chat? When it's not enough, you do better. That is step number 3. Do better. Because no matter how good you think you are, there is always a better pilot than you. You might go to locals and you might go undefeated. And you're like, yeah, I'm beating all these scrubs. Look at me go. All these guys. Pfft, easy. Blah, done. But then you go to a regionals, and then you learn that you're not the big, intimidating force, girth that you thought you were. You're actually tiny. And nobody wants to be tiny. You want to be big, right? Because bigger is better. That's typically how that works, right? You gotta do better. And then you gotta rinse and repeat. You see, this is a circle. This is actually a circle. You need to just get back in your plane, and you need to keep flying around. You need to keep flying around. You need to keep getting more cards. You need to keep practicing, and you need to keep getting better. And then you gotta rinse and repeat over and over and over again until you realize that you're the best pilot you can be, right? Because it's not the deck, it's the pilot. It's literally the same, the truth, the absolute God-spoken commandment. That's just how it is in the world. It doesn't have to be card games. Literally anything. It can be a plane. You could be a cook at McDonald's. You could be a bartender. You could be a rocket scientist. You could be a scuba diver. You can be Team Rocket. You have to just get better at everything you do. You need your equipment, and you need to practice, and you need to realize that it's not enough, and you need to get better and keep going and keep doing it over and over. And one day you'll grow so far and you'll reach so high, and that's when you know you're a good pilot.